video. He was a son, a brother, and a husband. He was 28 years old. He was our son, meaning my wife Carol and I. He was a brother to my daughter Noelle, and soon-to-be brother-in-law to her fiance. And he was a husband to our daughter-in-law, Emily. He was 28 years old, and he died Christmas Day, 2018. Just 1 week shy of what would have been his 20th anniversary of his liver transplant. In the days following that Ryan died, as we prepared for his memorial service, we had a lot of family at the house, a lot of friends, and we shared stories. We laughed, we cried a lot, we laughed some more, and we cried some more. But the one person that we spoke to during this entire time was, we were very fortunate that the pastor that married Ryan and Emily in 2016 also happens to be the mother-in-law of my brother-in-law, which I've often warned him, be careful what you wish for. And so as we told the stories of Ryan, she furiously wrote down everything that we were saying in preparation for the memorial service, which would happen days later. And so what became ever evident with everything that we know is that he was the creation of this talk. He was the catalyst that had me come up with the idea of the talk of making a difference today with the dash in your life. Now, our dashes are present every day in what we do. We definitely know in the opioid transplant world that our work hours are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I mean, right? That's absolutely right. But I don't think we ever sit back and think about that dash during that time frame, about what it is that we can do that's going to make a difference. What are we going to do that day during that time frame to really make a difference? And if you sit back and think about it, we don't take full advantage of it. You see a lot of other things that are on here. You know, hey, we're lucky that fortunately the calendar splits it up with a dash. Monday, Tuesday. And yes, sometimes when Monday and Tuesday are too hard with those dashes, you're left with, well, you can read it on the screen. Now on that phone, and I'm going to date myself here, that's a very prominent phone number. Oh, okay, wait, okay, so everybody gets it now. Okay, right? Okay, all right. So here's the question. 8675309, right? That's part of the song. Does anybody know who created that song? What? I heard something. That's right, Tommy Tutone. Do you know what the name of the song was, who the girl was in the song? Jenny, right. Everybody knows how the song went, Jenny, Jenny, who can I turn to? I didn't do that. Well, see, that phone number, back in Pennsylvania, especially Bethlehem, that was the exchange number of somebody's phone. So that dash got a lot of use. And so in 1981, when I graduated high school, and I know I just dated myself terribly to everybody in the room, but the prank would be is that you'd pick up the phone and you'd call 8675309. And whoever answered on the end of the phone, they'd say hello, and you'd say, is Jenny there? And they'd respond, Jenny, Jenny who? And you'd respond back, Jenny, Jenny, who can I turn to? And then you'd hang up. Only to wait about 5 or 10 minutes and start it all over again. You call them back and you'd say, is Jenny there? And they'd say, Jenny's not here. And you'd say, well then who can I turn to? And you'd hang up the phone again. And so you sang that song to them. Now, I know that sounds wickedly wickedly, wickedly insane to everybody in the room that you do that, and that you picked on somebody who didn't pick that phone over themselves. But that dash, if you think about it, made more people laugh and have a good time than you could probably count. Now, I don't think the person on the receiving end of that phone probably thought it was too funny. And eventually the phone company said, okay, we've got to get rid of it. And so there are dashes everywhere around us, from the day we were born until the day we die. And it really matters what you do with that time. We're in a field of donation and transplantation where we can make an incredible difference every day if we just let that dash express itself. It may be spending more time with a transplant recipient. It may be spending more time with that donor family who just needs that extra care moving forward with the donation process, where we don't have to rush. But how we do it and how we express it is totally up to us. So I'd like to share with you the impact of Ryan's dash on the people that we met. So I should start this off by saying that, Ryan was he was a mixologist, a very good mixologist, and he worked at a legal speakeasy. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. He worked at a legal speakeasy. But the day of his memorial service, nearly 1,000 people came to say goodbye. And the line was so long, and Carol and I, and Noel and Chris and Emily, we couldn't imagine, where did all these people come from? They drove hours. Many of you in the audience drove hours to come and pay their respects. There was one couple who had met Ryan from Maine, and they found about his death over to social media. So they dropped what they were doing and they drove 12 hours to be there with him. The line was so long that the church down the road actually called the funeral director and said, "Is everything okay?" And he said, "Yes, why?" He said, "Well, our parishioners can't find a place to park, and we see the line coming out from the funeral home down the street." And he said, "Yes, everything's fine. It's just that somebody important died, and they're here to pay their respects." And so we heard stories from a lot of those friends and families that came, and we would always hear that no matter what kind of day that they were having, Ryan would always make them feel better. He would listen to them. He would help them overcome a problem. And they said when they left, they would always feel that much better. My response back to one of those friends was, "Well, of course you felt better when you left. He's a mixologist. That's what his job is." And then it came to light that I'm relatively sure that Ryan probably personally contributed to the increased stock value of Uber and Lyft in the Lehigh Valley as well. And so those stories went on, and when it came time for the memorial service to start, the pastor got up in front of the room, and she said, "I want this to be a celebration. I want to talk about Ryan's dash." And so little did Carol and I and Noel, Chris, and Emily know that all those notes that she had taken, she had created into this beautiful memoir of stories that we had told her. And so, as I told you, Ryan was a liver recipient of nearly 20 years. He had received the gift of life from my beautiful wife, Carol, back in 1999. And Dr. Steve Dunn had done that transplant at St. Christopher's Hospital for Children, and then he was later seen at AI DuPont and had a wonderful, wonderful team. As a matter of fact, Ryan's transplant coordinator, Louise Flynn, is here from AI DuPont. She knew Ryan. But while Ryan was in the hospital at St. Chris's, he always was great with a prank. And one of the pranks that he thought would be really great was while he was in his hospital room, he had this rubber snake. And so he decided that when the lights went out before he was ready to go to bed, that he would just hang the snake from the IV pole. And so in the middle of the night, when the nurse came in to change his IV bag and didn't have the light on, and she was met with the head of a rubber snake. Now, the results of that were the lights coming on, screaming, which was a flood of residents and other nurses coming to the room thinking that there was an emergency, and only to roll over and look and see Ryan belly laughing as much as he could post-transplant after that. But that was part of how he began to really express his dash. He wasn't shy about pranking his mother, and Carol is always very particular about putting the manger out at Christmas time. And so we would leave the house, and certainly we'd come home and all the pieces would be rearranged someplace. They'd be at different parts of the manger or whatever. And we would politely have to remind Ryan, please take Joseph off the roof before he falls and hurts himself. The one piece he never, ever played with, and I find it remarkable, was baby Jesus. Always left it in maybe not the right spot, but always put it in a spot which was always surrounded by the three kings. And that was his way of being protective of, yes, he was pranking mom, but the sanctity of having that manger. Another trivia question. Does anyone know anything about this tattoo? No? Ever heard of the lover-loser tattoo? It's from the movie It. And so part of that story is that there is a group of young individuals, and they're kind of being picked on by people, and they decided that they were going to write loser on their arm. And one of the other characters came in and wrote, we're not losers, we're lovers, and put the V over top of the S. And so it became the lover-loser tattoo. It is the ugliest tattoo in the world. I wouldn't recommend getting it, but many people do. I.e., our son was planning on getting it along with a number of his colleagues. And so one of Ryan's best friends, who he worked with hand in hand every day, decided that he was going to get that tattoo days after Ryan died. And I remember Carol pulling up his sleeve and going, Neil, what is wrong with you? That is the ugliest tattoo, and why would you put it on your wrist? And he turned and he grabbed Carol by the shoulders, and he said, Mama Bear, that's my jigger hand. And every time I pour one, I want to make sure that Ryan's with me. And so we knew at that point that Ryan made such a difference to so many people. And it got me really thinking about how we all can make that difference with just some simple acts of kindness. You see, our dash really brings us to a point where it's a window of opportunity. It's a window of opportunity for us as professionals to fill a loss that a family may be experiencing. It's an opportunity for the transplant side maybe just to spend a little more time with that transplant recipient and have them navigate through some of the difficulties. It might be reaching out to a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time. It might be doing something different or special for a family member or even for yourself. For me, I didn't know that I was expressing my dash the day that Ryan had died. You see, we had been in the emergency department for about an hour and a half, and we watched the resuscitation efforts. Now, this was a team that I had worked with hand in hand, side by side for a number of years. When I'd be called for a case, and they'd be aggressively trying to save. But this was different to them. This was very personal. And when it came time that it was evident that Ryan had died, and they had stopped, I saw the anguish, I saw the disappointment on their face. And we all know the process of what happens after someone has died. There are things that need to be done. And so I politely asked the team, please, to leave the room. that I would take care of those final things that needed to be done. And so part of that was obviously speaking with the coroner, and then the final preparations before he needed to go, obviously off to the morgue. And so I remember holding his hand and saying, "This isn't right. This sucks. But I got your back. And yes, the team tried very hard to save your life, but they couldn't. But you need to know that they tried." Now, I didn't know if he could hear me or not, but I didn't care. I wanted him to know that I still had his back. So as I made that final preparation and closed the zipper and gave him a kiss goodbye and walked out the room, I was met by the emergency room physician. And he grabbed a hold of me by the shoulders and he said, "Why did you do that?" Not in an angry way, but "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Because I've worked with you before. I've seen the anguish on your face. Your team tried so hard to save our son. But I wanted to be the voice for Ryan to let you know that he understood what you had tried to do." And I kind of saw just a relief expression on his face. We hugged, we walked away. And he said, "Thank you." And I realized at that moment that I had closed a little bit of a gap for them with what they were feeling, allowed them to decompress in that time. And yes, while still grieving myself, that was something I needed to do for them. It became an expression of my own dash and why I did it. A number of years ago, I did a talk on professional engagement. When I was looking for things to put in the slide, I came across this great video of Winona Judd. And she was doing a recreation of a song, "I Can Only Imagine." It's a very popular song. A number of artists has done it. Mercy Me was the first one that did it. But she was talking about trials and tribulations that she had gone through personally and professionally, and how she had put up this shield of armor and wouldn't allow herself to be expressed or to be hurt anymore, or to open herself up to anyone. And she was struggling so much with it. And she had asked her mother, she said, "What can I do?" And her mother said, "Let them see the cracks in your armor. That's how the light comes through." The same can be said, that there is a crack in everything. And if we allow that light to shine through on us and utilize our dash to the advantage of our recipients and of our donor families, and personally and professionally, things will change. We can make a difference. We can change lives. We can change a course for someone who is struggling. I say this because there are 4 things that you can't get back in this life as much as you want. The stone after it's thrown. And I don't mean the physical stone. It's about what we think before we say it. Because after you say it, you can't get it back. The occasion after it's missed. And so we need to embrace the time that we have before us, whatever that might be. And certainly, the time after it's gone. So once again, it brings you back to, what are you going to do with your dash, with the time that you have before you? How are you going to use it? Who are you going to impact it with? You see, your dash really is the same thing that Mark Twain said, is that kindness is a language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. It's the same thing with our dash. If you use it, we overlook it so much that we can't hear what it means. We can't see what it means. And you have to open yourself up and allow it to be expressed, to move on with it. In general, your dash becomes a personal compass for you. And that personal compass allows you to take it in any direction in what you choose to do. how you can impact the lives, how you're going to change your own personal life. No one's going to tell you what direction you can take. It's all up to us. I have a very good friend in the audience, and every member of the board of directors has become a great friend. But I got a phone call weeks after Ryan had died from Wendy Garrison. And the OPO in San Diego had a simple request. Said, you know, we have a butterfly wall. We'd very much like to honor Ryan, if he would allow us, by having a butterfly placed on the wall. And she had said many families choose something to say on that butterfly. And she said, would you like to put something on the wings? I said, yes, I would. She said, well, what would that be? And I said, well, let me check with the bosses of the family, meaning my wife, my daughter, and my daughter-in-law. And so they came up with 5 simple words. And the 5 simple words are the same ones that I'm going to begin to close with. I had a good time. And so for all of you, I want you to know that I had a good time. I've had a good time, obviously, being your NATCO president. But I have a good time expressing my dash. And I hope each and every one of you this week in these sessions takes the time to explore your dash, to listen to your colleagues about what they have to say and how they made a difference in so many ways with what they're presenting and what they are saying. If you make new connections, how is that going to impact you moving forward? Do it for your donor families. Do it for yourself. Do it for your friends. But most importantly, make a difference today in the dash of your life for someone who is fighting for their tomorrow. And with that, I want to thank you. It has been my pleasure to be in front of you. I wish all of you the very, very best. Thank you very much.